This morning, before I had even properly woken up, at least 6 people had already worked on my behalf. The person who delivered the milk, the woman who cleaned the stairwell, the man who pressed yesterday's clothes, the auto driver, the tea stall, the boy who carried a crate past my window. I know all their faces, and not one of them, as far as I can tell, has a single day of paid sick leave in their life. Now, let me tell you where I stand, because this ends with an opinion. I think we have made a quiet, comfortable mistake. We treat this kind of work without a contract or a cushion, as the exception, a rough edge that development will eventually smooth away. But I have come to believe it is not the exception at all. It is the main structure of Indian working life, and we have been calling the majority a minority. Because the stakes here are not small, and they are not far away. When we say the economy grew or unemployment fell, we picture offices, salaries, and appointment letters. But that is not where most Indians actually work. The real Indian workplace has no HR department, no leave policy, and no name on the door. And if you ask how many Indians work this way, without a formal contract and its protections, most people would guess a large minority, a third, maybe half. But you know what? That is not even close. By most estimates, around 9 in every 10 Indian workers are informal. Not a slice of the workforce. Very nearly all of it. So here is what we are going to do. First, what informal work actually means beyond the jargon. Then, why almost the entire country ended up working this way. And finally, the big one, why we keep treating the rule as if it were the exception and what that quietly costs. Fundamentals first. An informal worker is not simply someone who is poor or who works with their hands. It is someone whose work leaves no paper trail of protection, no written contract, no paid leave when they fall ill, no employer putting money aside for their old age, no notice and no cushion if the work simply stops tomorrow. The job may be steady and the person skilled. What is missing is not effort, it is the net. Let me translate that into a single ordinary day. A formal worker who falls sick takes a leave, and the salary still arrives. An informal worker who falls sick faces a smaller, sharper question. Do I go to work with a fever, or do I lose the day's money? For most of the country, rest is not a right that is owed, it is a wage that is forfeited. And it is easy to picture this as only the very poorest, but that is the second surprise. The delivery rider with the app, the driver with the cab, the operator in the gleaming new warehouse, the salesperson on commission, even many who work inside large, respectable companies through a contractor. Modern clothes, modern phones, and the very same old exposure. Informality is not a class at the bottom, it is a condition that runs all the way up. So how did nearly a whole country end up here? Not by accident, and not by laziness. See, formal jobs, the kind with contracts and provident funds, are expensive to create and heavily governed. So an economy makes them slowly and carefully. But people need to eat every single day, and they cannot wait for the formal economy to get around to them. So they build their own work, in the gaps, informally, because the alternative to an imperfect job is not a perfect job, it is no job and no dinner. And here is the part that genuinely bothers me. Because this arrangement is so widespread and so old, we have quietly decided it is natural. We admire the resilience of the man who works at 70 because he has no pension, and the resourcefulness of the family that absorbs a medical shock with no insurance. And that resilience is real, and it is often magnificent. But we have turned a systemic absence of protection into a personal virtue, and in doing so, we have let ourselves off the hook for building the protection at all. Now, to be fair to that comfortable view, informality is not only a story of victims. A great deal of it is genuine enterprise. The street vendor and the small workshop are among the most entrepreneurial people in the country, and many would not trade their independence for a desk. And formalizing everything overnight with the stroke of a pen can destroy the very livelihoods it claims to protect. Anyone who tells you the fix is simply more rules has not met the people. The rules would crush. But there is a difference between valuing someone's independence and abandoning them to it. The vegetable seller can love being her own boss and still deserve a way to save for old age, a way to insure against a bad month, a way to not lose everything to a single hospital bill. Freedom and a safety net were never opposites. We have simply offered her the first, and quietly told her the second was not for people like her. And there is real, genuine progress worth naming, honestly. India has built some of the largest welfare and identity systems in the world: direct payments, food security, digital accounts that reach hundreds of millions who were once invisible. This is not a country that ignores its poor. However, and it is a very large however, a benefit you must be poor enough to qualify for is not the same as a protection that travels with your work. We have built a floor for the destitute. We have not built a net for the worker. Which brings us to the big one. The deepest cost of informality is not even the missing money, it is the missing predictability. A formal worker can plan, can borrow against a steady salary, can imagine next year. An informal worker lives inside a permanent uncertainty, where every month is negotiated fresh, and no shock is ever more than one bad week away. It is exhausting in a way that does not show up in any income statistic. We measure what they earn, we never measure what they carry. So let me reframe the whole thing. The problem is not that Indians work informally. The problem is that we designed every protection, the pension, the insurance, the paid leave, to hang off a formal job that 90% of people do not have. We attached the safety net to the wrong thing. We tied it to the employer in a country where most people do not really have one. And the fix, quietly, already exists in pieces all over the world. Portable benefits that belong to the worker and not the job, so a pension follows the person from gig to gig. Contributions that anyone can pay into, in tiny amounts, on the days they earn. A safety net woven around the individual, instead of the office. None of this is exotic. It is simply deciding that the net should fit the way people actually work, and not the way we wish they did. So the next time you hear that comfortable phrase, the unorganized sector, as if it were a small and shrinking corner of the country, I hope you will hear it differently. That corner is the room. It is the milkman and the maid and the driver and the vendor, 9 in 10 of us, holding up an economy that has never quite agreed to hold them back. They say a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. But this is not a chain with one weak link. It is a chain that is almost entirely made of the link we chose to call weak, and then chose not to protect. The least we can do is stop calling the majority an exception and start building the net for the country we actually are.